Welcome to another edition of Anthony T's Horror and Wrestling Show. I'm Anthony T. In this edition, I will be chatting with film director and director of the Shawna Shea Film Festival, Skip Shea, as he'll be on the podcast to talk about his latest film, Seeds, the Mass Independent Film Festival, and the Shawna Shea Film Festival. That will be happening next segment, right after I finish the intro here, because it's a long interview, and we're not going to be here all day with this podcast. This is kind of an hour podcast. We can go over an hour a little bit, but we're not going to be here for an hour and 30 minutes like the old days where I would have an hour and 30-minute podcast. That ain't happening. And in What's Anthony T watching? What happens when you have Full Moon's greatest franchise with cameos from AEW wrestlers? You get Puppet Master Dr. Death. I will be reviewing that film in What's Anthony T watching. I'll be back with my interview with Skip Shea.
Welcome to Dark Discussions, your place for the discussion of horror film, fiction, and all that's fantastic. A weekly podcast where the discussion is about the most recent horror and genre films. Intelligent talk on a genre that deserves intelligence. A conversation between co-hosts discussing not only the film, but also the connotation that the directors and screenwriters are trying to articulate. When you want more than a review, listen to Dark Discussions.
And speaking of perception, there's just one more scene I want to talk about, which is after Caleb discovers that Kyoto's a robot. Kyoto kind of peels off her skin, showing him what's underneath.
Now, wait a minute. I know where you're going with this, but tell me you weren't already thinking this 15 minutes earlier in the film. Exactly what he's thinking at that moment.
Which is he's a robot, too.
Oh, I considered the possibility.
Right, and that's what I like, is the fact that the writers are smart enough to know that this is what the audience would be thinking.
We've all seen Blade Runner.
Right, exactly.
www.darkdiscussions.com, wherever podcasts are found.
Every day there's a family struggling with hospital bills to care for their sick child who is fighting an illness. There's a woman who is fighting breast cancer and is having trouble making ends meet while paying for their treatment. And there are burn victims that are going through treatments to heal their deep wounds. There is a charity in the horror community that helps these people. Scares That Care is an organization that helps families deal with the bills for their child. They help women get the treatment they need to fight breast cancer, and they help people who are dealing with severe burns get the help they need to heal. Scares That Care is a 100% volunteer organization and 501c3 nonprofit charity that is dedicated to helping these people in fighting real monsters. To find out more information or to donate to Scares That Care, you can go to www.scaresthatcare.org. Every donation helps Scares That Care fight real monsters. Welcome back to Anthony T's Horror and Wrestling Show. I'm here with director Skip Shea. He is here to talk about his latest film, Seeds, which is released by Bayview Entertainment and VIPCO. How are you doing today, Skip?
Very good, Anthony. Thank you very much. How are you?
Good. What made you want to get into filmmaking?
Well, I think I always wanted to do this, like since I was a kid. And then a lot of life events got in the way before I finally decided to give it a go. In fact, it wasn't until in this century when I decided to start making films. It started more because I did a one-man show. I performed it in New York and in Somerville. And then after that, it kind of got me into a little bit of acting locally. And then there was some of the, mostly, the major films that come through here, mostly background acting. But, if you watch Shutter Island and you see the guy that's running around on the front lawn after the hurricane that they catch, that's me. So I had some fun scenes doing that. But while I was doing the background work, I was just watching how everybody made films. So when you're on a set like that, you're watching Martin Scorsese. I was in Taking Woodstock, so I'm watching Ang Lee. So I'm watching some of the greatest, ever, working on their craft. So then I finally decided to take a stab at it myself. And I would say, I started with shorts, which are a viable art form in their own, but I also think it's a great place to learn because it's better to make a mistake on something short than something large and long. But it was in 2011 when I did a horror short, Micro Cinema, that seemed to get some interest. So I did that, and then I followed that up with another horror short called Ave Maria, which ended up winning an audience award for Best Picture at a film festival in Rome, Italy. So after that, I decided, okay, I'll start trying to work on features. So I think it was, got my years are so off. I think it was 2016 when I finally did my first feature, Trinity. And then with especially again with Bayview, with the success of that, I sprung into Seeds.
Besides being a film director, you're also the director of the Shawna Shea Film Festival and Mass Indie Film Festival. Tell me about each of the film festivals that you run.
Well, it's they're part of the Shawna Foundation. Sadly, I lost a daughter. Shawna was a twin. She died on August 11th, 1999 in a car accident at the age of 16. And her twin sister Erin, when she graduated, the year she was graduating from high school, her and her classmates did a walk in Shawna's honor, and they raised $10,000 for us to start a scholarship fund with. And so it initially started as a scholarship fund, and then we're doing things to raise money for the scholarship fund. And one year we did a golf tournament, and I despise golf. I really hate it. So the following year I thought, well, why don't I just do a film festival to raise money for the foundation? And that's when the Shawna Shea Film Festival was born. That was 11 years ago now. We just had our 10th anniversary last year. And it was in one 2-hour block of shorts in Millbury at the Elm Draft Cinema. And since then, the Shawna Foundation has grown into a point where we have 2 film festivals. Our main one, the Shawna Shea Film Festival, and then we just took over the Massachusetts Independent Film Festival. Both of them, we have 4 venues, 3 or 4 days long each. Show over between features and shorts. We show over 100 films. So it's grown incredibly. And as such, it's actually helped grow the foundation where we now have a free poetry program. We do free screenings in Southbridge, Massachusetts. We have a Woman in Film Fellowship where we fund first-time female filmmakers. We help them make their first short. We premiere it at the festival. We have an artist micro grant. We're going to be starting several other programs. So it's completely taken off far beyond the expectations of anything that we ever thought we'd do in Shawna's name. The Shawna Film Festival, in particular, that's more of a fringe type festival because I make horror movies. So I get a lot of the more horror type things there. Mass Indie, we're a little more mainstream, although that's, since we've taken over, it's starting to go a little bit, getting edgier as well. But that's what we do. We love showing small independent films. I think there's a need for it. I think there's definitely needs to be a home for them. And because of my relationship with Bayview, I can now recommend movies to Bayview, and I can get distribution for some people. So we're really lucky with that, and grateful for that with the folks at Bayview. So that's the story. That's a big story behind the film festivals and the Shawna Foundation.
What made you want to take on the difficult task of running 2 film festivals?
My therapist asks me the same question all the time. I don't know. It's insanity. Mass Indie, I after this success with the Shawna, I sat on the board for Mass Indie, and the folks who were running it were kind of wanted to move on. So it was the choice was either fold it or we take it. So we took it, and I'm grateful because it does give us an opportunity to show different types of films that we not show at the Shawna Festival.
Let's move on to your latest film, Seeds. Tell everyone about the film.
It's a folk horror tale, and it is personal. I mean, that's a good segue after talking about the Shawna Foundation. This is in a lot of ways my movie about grieving parents, and what they do and how they try to make sense of things like that, and the extremes that they may go to either accept it or run away from it. So it's basically about a couple who have lost their daughter. The husband, Andrew, gives lectures on old cults, more of the Celtic version, and he's called off mysteriously to go to this little village in the woods where he heard he had an uncle who lived there, and he has to deliver some seeds. And then his wife, who is psychic, realizes something terrible is happening there or may happen there. So she goes to save him or find him. And in the meantime, overlooking all of this is the Catholic Church, who desperately wants the secrets of the cult.
To me, this film felt like one of those European-style type horror films that you would see from like a Jess Franco or Jean Rollin. What made you want to do the film in that style?
That is incredibly insightful. I am a sucker for foreign films. I really am. I love folk horror films. All of the great folk horror films are British made. I bought the Severin package of folk horror films. I think it came out 2 years ago. And before that, I even have a region-free DVD Blu-ray player, so I could see like movies like Robin Redbreast. It was a very old black and white folk horror film from the UK. But alternatively, I'm also drawn to the Italian horror in a very big way. So I tend to have with Trinity as well. People have made the comment that they seem more like European films, but I think that's because I tend to lean more that way creatively, and I think even there seems to be a formula here with that people get trapped into, American filmmakers. So I shouldn't say trapped, because they can make however they want to make it, but I think there is there's a liberating feel to the way that they make films in Europe, where they just seem to be far more creative in the storytelling aspect of it, where it isn't like a 3-act plot, or the same character arc. It can be none of those things, and I love the freedom that allows me as a filmmaker and an artist.
The film is presented in black and white as opposed to the traditional color format. What made you want to go for a black and white presentation? That goes directly to Robin Redbreast. That's a black and white folk horror film, and it had such an impact on me that I wanted to kind of put this in the same camp with that. I'm old, and I'm a sucker for black and white movies anyway. I mean, my favorite filmmakers, and they're all European, but like Fellini or Bergman, Antonioni. There's that certain era, the French New Wave of European
filmed that was so liberating in how they told stories. And most of them were in black and white. So I'm completely drawn to that.
Genre fans might know two of the stars of this film, Kip Weeks from The Strangers and legendary Italian horror actress Barbara Magnolief from Dario Argento's Suspiria. What made you want to bring those actors on board for this film?
I had become friendly with Kip on another project, a documentary, The Man Behind the Mask, by Stacey Buchanan and Jess Barnhouse. And we just really hit it off. And I thought it would, and it was. I thought it would be a joy to work with him, and it was a joy to work with him. He's an incredibly giving actor. And you said it. I mean, she's legendary. Why wouldn't I want to work with Barbara Magnolfi? She is all that. And in particular, although part of it was because of the success of my short Ave Maria, and then subsequently Trinity in Italy, that I really wanted an Italian actress in it, and luckily Barbara became available for me, so I took advantage.
Besides that, what was it like casting the other lead roles in the film, as the cast in this film was very good, including the film's lead, Emma McKenzie?
Emma, to work at my level, which is incredibly low budget, and I could say the same for Trinity. In Trinity, the lead was Sean Carmichael, and in Seeds, it's Emma McKenzie. I cannot tell you how lucky I am that I found her. I've just known her from around the local film scene. I would see her at events, and she had this incredible Irish accent, which if you're doing folk horror, you really want to harken back to that. You really want to, that gives it, to me, a much more authentic feel. Now, anyone can be here from Ireland with an Irish accent, but it doesn't mean they can act. She's amazing, and amazing in every way. And I have to say this because working at this level, sometimes it's stop and go. It's not like we have, okay, here's the budget, we're going to shoot for these 30 days straight, and then that's it. Sometimes things interrupt it. And so she had to maintain her character's arc, her character's story, emotionally, while it was way out of order. And she did it brilliantly. I mean, I can never say enough about her performance. She carries this movie. This would be nothing without her. She's incredible.
What was it like casting the other roles in the film?
Well, Patrick Bracken, who plays Andrew, if you come to either the Shawna Shea Film Festival or the Massachusetts Independent Film Festival, you'll see him as one of our hosts. He's a local stage actor in the Worcester area. I've seen his plays, and then I thought, hey, he's good and he works with us. So we had a discussion, and he was in. I was grateful for him. Aurora Gravel, who is plays the person who's sacrificed. She's been in just about everything I've made. She's in fact, I'm hopefully you'll see something sooner or later that we have made together where she is the lead. She's an incredible, generous and local actor, and incredibly brave. I can't say enough for her. The premise of Seeds initially started, and it's a very strange story, because I live in this little house in Uxbridge, and my neighbor, Damien Gaudet, is a photographer, DP guy, and he one day said, "Hey, come on outside. I want to take a portrait of you." I'm like, "Okay." And so it's raining out, so I go out in my black slicker, and then I have, it's summer, I have my shorts on, and he hands me an axe and takes my picture. And I'm like, okay. So, and I put it up on Facebook or wherever, and it just got a lot of attention. And he's like, "We have to do a story around that character." So that's why I'm in the movie. And that's actually where the whole, no pun intended, seed of that story started. When I thought, okay, I'll play this guy, but I want to I wanted to be about grieving parents. And then, then there was a lot of, real hard personal things in there, as I'm a man who apparently kills his own daughter in seeds, but, somehow gets her resurrected. So there's, there are a lot of personal layers in this movie that, the normal viewer won't understand, nor should they understand. It's only me, telling the story that I think some might get it. But that's how I got in it. And I don't normally, I wouldn't recommend acting and directing at the same time. It's really difficult. There were times when I knew my mind was on the next shot and not what I was saying. So we had to do it again. So that can take up too much time. But we did it, and everyone else. I mean, I have a relationship with just about everyone else who performed in it, a personal relationship. So I'm when I mentioned Bergman before, like a director like Ingmar Bergman, who always seemed to work with the same group of people, I'm turning into that. I found like my family, my film family, that I'm very comfortable working with, and they're it. You see them in Seeds.
Speaking of the difficulties that you endured when you were acting and directing, can you go into that a little more?
Yes. In particular, there's a scene when I'm sitting with Aurora at a bar, and we're, talking, I'm saying you don't have to go through this, and she's telling me I don't have. She's preparing to be sacrificed, and I'm preparing to go kill a man. And we're both telling each other we don't need to go through this. And the first several takes, I'm literally thinking, is the camera in the right place? How's the lighting? Am I hearing noise behind me? And instead of thinking about my character, my lines. And we had to literally break for me to just sit down and get into that space. And again, credit to Aurora. For being my scene partner in that, who really helped me get back into character. But, that's the several times doing it, while I'm thinking of something else, takes time away from us moving forward. So that's, I was better prepared after that to continue with the shooting of the movie. But that was an incredible learning experience. I know some people are very comfortable with acting in their own films, and that's good for them, but I'm not. I may do it again, but I would have to. It would have to be one of those situations where, while I'm here, let's use me, that type of things, as opposed to, just casting myself. I enjoyed being in it. I enjoyed acting with everyone. I do enjoy acting, but it was a challenge.
Tell me about the locations where you shot this film, as it had a secluded and gothic feel to them.
Yes, I hike almost, when I can, almost daily, along the rivers around here. I'm just north of Providence along the Blackstone River. And oddly enough, the Blackstone River, the legend has it that when Lovecraft ran out of ideas, he would travel up the Blackstone River into like the area where I live to come up with new ideas. But just literally walking by the river, I, stumbled across those two trees that had fallen on each other that looked like a gateway to something. That was just luck. That was just me wandering around, in my local neighborhood. It's probably less than a quarter of a mile away from me right now. The execution scene was pretty much in my backyard. The house, the Gothic house, is some friends, and they actually act in it. And in it, Vincent and Nicole, that's their place, and literally that's their place. When I say it, that's all this, the taxidermy, everything is theirs. I didn't have to do a thing. That place is amazing. It's an amazing house. But the most exciting thing to me was the ferry. That's the same ferry that's used in Let's Scare Jessica to Death, the 1972, I believe it is, horror film. One of my all-time favorite horror movies. So I got Patrick in a car and Chris the DP, and we drove down to Connecticut to cross the Connecticut River in this ferry. And the guy on the ferry was incredible, the Lewis ferry, because he kept saying, he saw us. He's like, "Oh, you guys making a film?" We're like, "Yeah." So we were the only people on the boat because we went at a time of day when it wouldn't be busy. And he drove up the river. He just drove around. So we got everything we needed and brought us back. He was an incredibly nice guy. I mean, very, very helpful. I appreciated it, but I was really excited to get that. I mean, it's the same to me as working with Barbara, as working with Kip, as making it black and white like Robin Redbreast, making a folk horror film. There's this great historic lineage, and actually I should say let's scare Jessica to death because it's also New England. There's this great lineage of horror that I really want Seeds to be a part of. And having those actors in it, having these locations in New England, have it be in black and white, have it be in folk horror, have Emma with an Irish actor, Emma from Ireland, which and it played well in Ireland, the movie. I feel it has, even though it's a small, low budget film, there's a place in the lineage of horror movies for this where it fits nicely.
What was the atmosphere like on set, considering this is a serious horror film?
I do my best to keep it light. I will be the first person to crack a joke because ultimately, I mean, everyone brought their A game. Everyone's involved. But again, this goes to going on a set and watching how other directors behaved and what it took to get the best out of your cast and crew. And it's never to be a distant or mean or direct, person. You can be direct. You can say, this is what I need. But it also you really have to build a team effort. It has to feel like you're a team. And I'm really big on humor to break, those hard moments to make everyone relax, because I love, making movies. I love doing all this. I love that I've been able to do this, but I also understand that we didn't cure cancer. I want to keep in perspective who we are, and we're working at a level where it really is everyone's commitment that matters. So I have to do everything I can to make it as comfortable and open for everyone, and yet at the same time get us all to work. It's a very good question, because I know people. I've been on sets where, local independent filmmakers, and they're kind of suddenly act Hollywood, and I'm thinking you're just going to get people angry and not want to work with you. The goal is to just have everyone go home happy.
What was the toughest scene to film?
The toughest scene to film, and this was probably, it was actually, because of practical effects. It was David Graziano played the priest, Father Tom. It was actually the toughest scene was his head in the bucket. Scene, that practical effect that we did for that, because it was just hard. I mean, he had to get on. It was on a piece of plywood on two sawhorses, with a hole in it. So would stick his head up in the hole in the bottom of the bucket. Then I put the dirt and the leaves and everything else on top of the plywood. Then we get on a ladder and shot down from there. But it was just an awkward place for him to crawl underneath and get in there, where it was a struggle. It was a struggle that took a lot longer than it should have. But that was probably the most challenging, technically. Emotionally, the most challenging was there were two parts. Emma's opening monologue at the diner with her friend was difficult emotionally, because as a grieving dad, a lot of the things that she said were direct quotes from me that I had said to people. And similarly, when all the tables are turned at the end, when it's suddenly it's the matriarch Emma's character versus the patriarch, the cardinal. That final scene when she takes control over everything was also a very emotional scene. So emotionally, those were challenging for all of us. Everyone had to be mostly respectful for Emma because she had to perform those things. But those were the scenes that I really had to make sure we nailed, and we did because it was Emma.
Another thing that I liked in this film was the score. Tell me about the composer, as he does a very good job with it, as it gave the film an added level of dread and suspense, which is needed for a film like this.
Yes, Sean McPherson or Shooty H.G. SHOOTIEHG. He's oddly enough, he moved back here from L.A. I knew him when he was a high school student, and I wasn't. I just knew I was working there at the time. And he moved to L.A. He started he was in a metal band, Hostile Groove, which was an incredible metal band. And they did fairly well out there, but he moved back home, and he just does sound work. And one day I just accidentally bumped into him. This was with my previous movie, Trinity. And I said to him, "Oh my God, this sounds a mess. This guy promised me he was going to fix it." Because I hadn't seen him in years, and he says to me, "What's wrong?" Actually, I take that back. I give Sean so much credit because he flew out from L.A. for my daughter's funeral. And I saw him then. And then he came to one of our film festivals. But anyway, he saved Trinity. He fixed all the sound for my movie Trinity. And then I told him I was making this, and I mean, he was a musician. And he said, "So who are you going to have score it?" And I said, "Well, but do you want to?" And he's like, "Yeah." And it was an incredible experience because, I sent him stuff that I, thought he should hear, but he already had his ideas. I mean, he's the type of person who listens to scores, just on his own. But there was the scene when Emma's in the house before she slips and falls and hits her head. And so she has this like assault of psychic images coming at her. But that's not how the scene was originally edited. It was edited as this very slow and creepy thing. And I wanted this tone of dread. And then he sent me that like jarring, music. And he said, "I don't know if this works for that scene." And I said, "It does. I just have to recut it." And it made it so much better. So he actually scoring it. I tweaked the edit because his score was so good. He made the movie so much better. And he's local. And if anyone's local looking, A, for a sound guy, or B, for someone to do their score, and he's the one. I mean, he's done, songs for games like Final Fantasy, and was it Devil May Care or something? I'm not a gamer, but he's actually does songs for games. So, I mean, he has a very decent following by people who just know him for that. But no, I agree. His score was incredible and spot on.
How did you come up with the film's story?
Well, that goes back to the folk horror thing, although I was going to use the mandrake root instead of apple seeds. The mandrake root looks creepy, and it looks like a deformed person. Very expensive and very hard to find. So this will go to a Shawna Shea Film Festival connection. Colin Graham and Laura Graham they're in Scotland now. They were in Ireland then. Filmmakers who came over. We showed one of their movies. And then they stayed with us for a few days, and I'm explaining, hey, I'm writing this story. I'm going to use the mandrake root. And Laura said to me, "You have to use the apple seed." And that lecture that Patrick gives as Andrew, talking about the history of apple seeds and how they were used as mystical things, is absolutely true. Everything he's saying there is actual truth. She sent me things on the legend of the apple and cutting it in half, and it looks like Da Vinci's Vitruvian Man. She gave me that. She said some people believe it so much so in the mystical powers of the apple that they use it as a name. And then she pointed to the Beatles, who use the Apple label, and then Apple, like the Mac computer I'm using right now to talk to you. They use those things for a purpose. I was like, oh my God, there's a lot more to this than I can have imagined. I shifted it from the mandrake root to the apple and to the apple seeds that way. Now, one thing we didn't get into, and I'm going to, that's a bad way to preface anything. But my film Ave Maria, my film Trinity, and Seeds is also a part of my storytelling as a survivor of clergy sexual abuse. I was abused by priests when I was a kid. So part of I already knew that I needed to have something with the church and with the cardinal in Seeds, because I do that in a lot of my films now. I kind of try to tell that story. And in this version, I really wanted to get more into the Vatican Bank, that this looks more than a business than anything else, as well as showing an abusive priest who gets what's coming to him. And actually, if you see Trinity, he's the priest from Trinity. They're both of the movies are connected, but not in a direct way, but in a very small way. When I was writing it, I knew that I needed the church. I knew that I needed, grieving parents. And so what I eventually did with Seeds was that I kind of replaced the masculine version of the Holy Trinity with a feminine version of the Holy Trinity. You have Emma Maca as the mother, Aurora, who comes back as the daughter, and then the spirit guide is the Holy Spirit. So I've kind of made this almost the rise of the matriarchy and the fall of the patriarchy as well. Again, there's a lot of stuff to this that a lot of people don't know unless I say it. So all of those were the ideas that I had to put on a whiteboard before I wrote a story, and then this is what came out.
Speaking of religion, what makes you keep coming back to that topic in your films?
Well, I mean, as a survivor, that's an easy answer, because it gives me the opportunity to continue to talk about it, because nothing has been done about it, the clergy abuse of kids, so I want to keep the story going. Now, a lot of people have asked me, is this a cathartic thing for me? And no, it isn't that. I mean, my one-man show was about my life, clergy abuse survivor, losing a daughter. And it was, believe it or not, it was mostly comedy, because you can't really talk about those things straight without people, running for the doors. And I also found that horror works the same way. If you put a horror shield in front of it, it's easier to then have people have these discussions about, hey, what's the church doing now to protect kids? What are they doing to take care of the people that they didn't take care of before? And the biggest part of why I keep doing that is because I will get an email from someone who's watched this or who hears me on your show, and they'll tell me, I'll be the first person they'll say, tell their story to, because they'll feel safe. And that's the first step in healing. I do it for everyone else who needs to heal. I'm fine. I can do this stuff. I can take, whatever hits come my way for doing this work. But I do this for everyone else who is still kind of in the shadows because of this, because it's not easy to come forward. And people lose family members. They lose friends. They lose a lot of things when they come forward. So I'm just letting them know that I'm still here and I'm in their corner.
This is a film that tends to lean towards the odd house side of horror. What made you want to tell a story that goes for more of a slow burn and dialogue heavy approach?
I love art house cinema. I guess, make what you love. That's the stuff I love. So that's the route I go. I think eventually, maybe the next one, maybe a little more like graphically violent, but it'll still have an art house feel to it, and it'll still be very surreal and absurdist. I love art house cinema, and it's a shame what's happening to them. I mean, around here, I mean, they still have the Avon in Providence, but around here, other than the Avon, I have to go to like Cambridge or Brookline for any art house movies, when I used to be able to just go to Worcester or the cable car in Providence, which I loved. And I think this in a lot of ways, again, speaks to the importance of smaller film festivals like ours, because we have these smaller art house and foreign films that we show at both of these film festivals, because they're incredible forms of art. I mean, there's a reason they're called art house, because it's viewed as an art form. And I'm not a person who sits here and says, "Oh my God, I hate these Marvel movies," because I don't. I really enjoy them. But I think for some reason people miss that that's also art. Art house films give people the realization that they're actually viewing the work of artists. Everyone involved in a film is an artist, from the writer, the director, the actors, the DP, the sound guy is an artist. The people who design the sets are artists. The makeup people are artists. I mean, they're all creating art. And so that's kind of why I lean that way towards art house cinema, because I really want people to think of movies as an art form. All movies, none excluded, as an art form.
Another thing that this film does well is focus on the topic of mental illness. What made you want to include that as part of the main story?
As a survivor of clergy sexual abuse, I am a person with mental illness. I have PTSD. So I wanted to include her struggles, and part of those struggles, especially when grieving, and especially because you don't know, am I going crazy, or is this part of a grieving process? And that's real, to anyone who has a deep grieving of, especially like the loss of a child. You kind of think you're losing your mind, but at the same time, do you want to mask it with anything, or do you feel like you need to go through the process? But I wanted to show her, and I'm not. This wasn't any type of anti-meds statement. I wasn't saying that in this movie at all. I believe people need meds, and they are there for a purpose. But she was also grieving, and I think that's what I was getting to at this. But I wanted not only to show how what it's like with a person with mental illness, but the more how the effect that your illness might have on somebody else. Like Patrick's character Andrew was also grieving, and his way of grieving, which I used to scoff at. Like there's that movie, like Don't Look Now, with Donald Sutherland and Julie Christie, Nicholas Roeg's film, and it's about grieving parents, and they go to his work in Venice, and all he's doing is working, and I kept thinking, that's crap. All they do is show the men working and the woman grieving, and then I actually took a step back and look at my life, and I'm like, oh my God, all I'm doing is working. I'm not grieving. I'm not allowing myself those moments. So when he says to her, "I'm not going to let your mental illness, stop my growth," that's a really tough scene for people, because he should be the caretaker for her, as she's grieving and with mental illness, but at the same time he does have his own life to live. So it's a very tough moral dilemma that I put that character in intentionally, just because I think people make those choices every day with family members with mental illness and people with mental illness, because they don't want to become that extra burden either. And I think instead of how they acted in Seeds, I think it's a place for a dialogue that people need to have. So there's, again, I don't know that scene will cause a dialogue, but I'm hoping so. I mean, I'm hoping people think about it after they see it.
What made you want to add the psychic aspect as well?
I think there might be, and I could just be a crazy grieving father, but I think that there's something to that stuff. I think that I believe, that's the best way to put it. I believe that there are people who have an ability, and it's hard to scoff at. And when we look at the limitations that our eyes can see, our eyes can only take in so much light from a certain prism, and there's so much that our eyes just can't see and that our brains can't process. The same with our ears. We can only hear certain decibels. It doesn't mean the others don't exist. So for us to say if we can't see it, if we can't hear it, if we can't feel it, it doesn't exist, is kind of a limited way to look at things, because we already know that there are things beyond the grasp of what the limitations of our human body can give. But I'll tell you a story. There was this I go to a medium and talk with my daughter. And I went once, and Shawna said, this is about my movie Trinity. I was just starting to submit it to film festivals and hadn't announced that it was done. And the poor person reading me has no idea what the heck this conversation's about. And so Shawna wanted to know why I didn't tell anybody the movie was done. And I said, well, I'm waiting till it's in a film festival. She's like, no, you got to let everybody know now. She's like my agent. You have to let everybody know now. And then she said, why didn't you submit Trinity to South America? And I said, it never occurred to me to submit it to South America. And she said, well, just Brazil and Argentina. Submit it to Brazil and Argentina. So that day I went home and I submitted Trinity to a film festival in both Brazil and Argentina. And within 4 months, I was accepted at both and ultimately won awards at both. And that is so strangely specific advice that it's hard for me to ignore that there isn't something else out there. Obviously, I've had more personal, conversations with the medium and Shawna that way. But that's, I think, an odd filmmaker story of my thing, of that. Again, this is what I believe. I'm not telling anyone else they have to believe what I believe. I'm not that, but I wanted to include that there because I think that there's a saying, and I know that there's people in Ireland have said this, but there's when people are grieving, they believe the veil is thinnest between our world and their world. It is when you can see both sides, when you're in the throes of grieving. And so I also wanted to honor that theory. I hope I'm not making you go, oh my God, this guy's nuts.
No problem. The film is being distributed by Bayview Entertainment and VIPCO. How did the distribution deal come about?
I already had a deal with them for Trinity. I got that through the movie agency. Philip, who works at the movie agency, was my sales agent for Trinity. He got me into Bayview. I started my relationship with Bayview then. So I just said to them, hey, you want to see my new movie? And they said yes. It was so easy. It shouldn't be that easy. What
projects do you have on the horizon?
I'm really, really working very hard in the film festivals and creating more programs for the Shawna Foundation. So that's really pushing my creative side off. And I started a movie called Florence pre-COVID, and then COVID hit. Then I came back and we started, working on all these programs for the foundation. So I'm trying to kick that back up. And then who knows? I mean, that might be like my grand finale. That might be it. I mean, I'm 63. I'm an older guy. I started this very late in life, and then I can focus more on the foundation. But I really do want to. I really want to get this one finished because I think it'll be a very art house, very surreal, very absurdist. I'm looking more towards absurdism as philosophy as each day passes. And so it'll be more of that, but it'll definitely be horror, and it will have its extreme moments. Those have already been shot. So that, and then other than that, right, it's just focusing on the Shawna Foundation.
When are your film festivals?
Coming up right now. I mean, if you go to shawnafoundation.org, right now you'll see the link, the poster for Mass Indie. Click on the poster, and it'll take you to the schedule and the ticket sales. So the ticket sales went live today. It's April 12th through the 15th. April 12th is at Starlight in Southbridge, 1 block opening night of shorts. The next 3 days are in Worcester at the Hilton Garden Inn in downtown Worcester. and it's Studio 50, which is the front room at the WICN radio station. Very cool space. I'm really excited to be there. And then we do have a special free screening at Clark University on Friday of 2 documentaries that's free to students, free to anyone. And it'd be really good to talk back because actually it's a Rhode Island story. One of them is we're going to show the first episode of the Slatersville doc that's on PBS Rhode Island now about the history of the Slatersville Mill by Christian D. Resendez. And Christian will be on hand to talk. And I think it's should be an interesting conversation because we have, a lot of documentary filmmakers, but it's one thing to make a documentary. It's another one to make a docu-series. I think it's 11 episodes long, which is incredible. It's like, he put 10 years into it. It's an incredible piece of work. So we really wanted to, I'm happy that Clark University's on board with letting us use their big hall for it. And that'll be a fun event. So we have our foreign films, our Saturday morning, final day at noon is our horror block, horror shorts. Everyone, that's generally sells out because people love their horror movies. But it'll be a fun day. So that's in April. The Shawna Festival is in September, the week of the 21st. I'm not sure the dates. I don't have them in front of me, but it's the week of the 21st, and it'll be the Wednesday through Saturday again, all the same locations. Opening in Starlight, we'll probably in the 2 others in Worcester. I don't know if we'll have anything at Clark with that. And this one will be a lot more. The Shawna will be a lot more fringe. I mean, we say it's a fringe festival. I don't know if I can swear on here, but somebody had a hashtag for us once that was, fringe is F. So like, wow, okay, that's good. But it is good because in a way, I mean, we lost Shawna in 1999, but she was very fringe. So this honors her in ways that people don't understand. So I'm appreciative of that, and I thank you for asking about that. But those are the two festivals coming up. Just go to shawnafoundation.org, SHAWNA foundation.org.
And where can they find you on social media and on the web?
Social media, it's just Skip Shea. It's pretty simple. You'll find me as Skip Shea on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Mostly on Facebook and Twitter, though. I think I'm Skip Shea 01 or 02 on Twitter, because there's another one out there somewhere.
Well, Skip, I want to thank you for coming on to my podcast.
Thank you for having me, Anthony. This was great. I really, really appreciate this.
Have a good day.
You too. Thanks.
Hey guys, this is Steve and Christina. I'm the founder, owner, creator, and host of Super Retro Throwback Reviews. Are you looking for the best movie reviews, music reviews, video game reviews, and Comic-Con coverage all around? Well then look no further. Definitely check out Super Retro Throwback Reviews on YouTube and our new audio podcast, the new and improved Super Retro Throwback Reviews audio files version 2.0 on the following media distributors: Podbean, Google Play, Stitcher, SoundCloud, iTunes, and Spotify.
Class is over, John. Time for something new and improved.
Hi, I'm Anthony T.
And I'm Director Andrew Duran, and we are the
Two from Hell.
And we're putting Rated R back into podcasting.
Every month we will be dropping an episode on the Dark Discussions Network.
We'll be chatting about some of our favorite films, news, reviews, and maybe interviews.
You can find Two from Hell on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and other podcast providers. And don't forget to like us on Facebook and Instagram at Two from Hell Podcast.
Trust me, you're seriously not going to want to miss the show.
You can find Anthony T's Horror and Wrestling Show on these social media platforms: at Anthony T's Horror and Wrestling on Facebook, Instagram, and the Slasher app, on YouTube at youtube.com/filmarcademedia, on podcast providers like Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and Spotify, and other major podcast providers. And you can also join Anthony T's Horror and Wrestling Show group over on Facebook. Just type in Anthony T's Horror and Wrestling Show in the group section. What's Anthony T watching this episode? Well, I told you in the beginning that I would be reviewing a full moon features film featuring AEW stars. That's right, we have wrestlers in a film, everyone. The film is Puppet Master Dr. Death. That's Doctor with a K and not a C. This is basically a spin-off film of Retro Puppet Master, which was first released to video stores in 1999, which I think is one of the better entries in the Puppet Master franchise. I know it's probably the less glorious of all the Puppet Masters, but I thought it was one of the better ones in that franchise. So when news came out last year that Full Moon Features was doing Puppet Master Dr. Death, I was very interested to see how they would approach this film, if this would be more of a prequel or current day. This takes place in the current day, which is very interesting because in the current day of the Puppet Master series, we've only seen literally the core group of puppets. You know, Blade, Tunneler, Pinhead, Jester, Six Shooter, those puppets. But it was very interesting to see one of the retro puppets in present day. At least it makes for an interesting film to have one of these retro puppets in the current timeline of the series. And the other thing that really excited me about this entry of the Puppet Master series was the fact that it had 2 stars from All Elite Wrestling. That's right. Laura Dennis, who you might know as the Bunny, and Jesse Gomete, who you know as the Blade, make cameos in this entry of the Puppet Master series. Now this, I think, came about during Charles Band's Full Moon Freak Show podcast, as the two were interviewed on that podcast, which is a good listen. Check that podcast out if you can. It's currently in a hiatus, but I really enjoyed the first season of Charles Band's Full Moon Freak Show. It's definitely worth a listen. But back to the film. I thought this was a very good entry in the Puppet Master series, as this was intense throughout. Even though this film has a running time of 59 minutes. I know. Running times are an issue with full moon films these days. I know. But it's not about quantity, it's about quality. And this film is very good in quality here. The fact that this film has very good direction by Dave Parker, who people might know directed such films as the underrated Full Moon film, The Dead Hate the Living, and the direct-to-video cult classic, The Hills Run Red. He does a very good job with the way he directs this film here. I really liked Dave Parker's direction here, as he's a director who I wish had more opportunities to direct in the horror genre, quite frankly. Even if it's indie or so what, I wish he had more opportunities, because he's a very talented director, I think. He does a very good job with this entry of the Puppet Master franchise. I like the way that he directs some of the film's death scenes, as it has a terrifying feel to it, like the opening scene or the morgue scene, just as a couple of examples of his good direction here. He also makes sure that this film has a level of dread to it, as this is probably one of the darkest Puppet Master films in the series, and Parker does a very good job in the way he handles the material here, as this is very dark and very bloody, quite frankly. And it's good that he's still able to handle that material very well. He did it with, like, The Hills Run Red. He's still able to make the action work so well. And he does it here in this film. He also does a really good job directing his cast as he makes sure that the performances are good enough so that it doesn't hinder the film, as sometimes with a cast of unknowns like this film, even though you had a couple of AEW stars, you had a cult film actress in Melissa Moore, most of your leads here are unknowns, but I like the fact that Parker does a good job in the way he directs them to the point that it makes the performances good and keeps you interested in the story. I also like the screenplay here. I like how the writer does a good job building this suspense. He takes his time with the way he approaches the death scenes here. Some of them had a nice suspenseful feel to it. Some of them were just downright gory, which really made it a entertaining film. He does a good job developing his main character throughout the film as everything builds to a shocking ending, which is very different for a Puppet Master film, as I can't remember a Puppet Master since maybe Curse of the Puppet Master where the film had a shocking ending. But here it works out very well, and that is a credit to the writing in this film, as this is really one of the better entries of the Puppet Master franchise. I also like the effects in this film. There are some very good gory effects in this film, especially towards the end of the film. The effects there were just great. I think that the filmmakers did a great job with the way they handled the effects throughout this film. And for a low-budget film, it looked very good. This is one of the better entries of the Puppet Master franchise, as Puppet Master Dr. Death is a bloody entry that is intense throughout. And it's a credit to its direction from Dave Parker and the screenplay that he had. As if you're a Puppet Master fan, definitely check out Puppet Master Dr. Death. I promised you a double interview episode last episode. That didn't happen. But it's happening next episode, as I will be talking to Jay Crimson, as he has two films, Green Hell and The Witch, on Troma Now streaming service. He'll be on the podcast to chat about those films. Then I will be chatting with Brian Matthew Ward to talk about his Indiegogo campaign for his upcoming film Voyeur. Then episode 96. It will be my review of WrestleMania 39, as that's fast approaching. You'll get my thoughts on night 1 and night 2 of the event. That's what's coming up on the podcast. With that, I want to thank you for listening to this podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe to Anthony T's Horror and Wrestling Show. You can find the podcast's official Facebook page, Instagram page, and on the Slasher app at Anthony T's Horror and Wrestling. Don't forget, you can listen to past episodes of Anthony T's Horror and Wrestling Show over at youtube.com/filmarcademedia and docdiscussions.com. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and other podcast providers. I also have an official Facebook group for Anthony T's Horror and Wrestling Show podcast over on Facebook. Just type in Anthony T's Horror and Wrestling Show over on Facebook and go into the group section, and you can join the official group. With that, I want to thank you for listening to this podcast. Have a good day. Support indie wrestling. Support indie horror. This has been a Film Arcade Media production.